Pode ser clichê, mas é verdade.
Mamy tylko jedną planetę.
Trebuie să o protejăm.
Dobbiamo prendercene cura.
Да показваме нашата любов.
Η κλιματική αλλαγή είναι μία από τις μεγαλύτερες απειλές που αντιμετωπίζουμε.
Para ayudar a combatirlo.
Ja rakentaa parempi tulevaisuus.
Združimo moči.
Dela idéer med varandra.
Inspiriamoci l'un l'altro.
Und neue Lösungen zu finden.
The European Climate Pact is here.
Y estamos impacientes por empezar.
Az Európai Éghajlati Paktum mindenkinek szól.
Chaque action compte.
No ambition too small.
Jer možemo svladati ovu krizu.
Maar alleen als we het samen doen.
Maar zing. Together.
Samen.
Zusammen.
So, will you join us?
Pode ser clichê, mas é verdade.
Mamy tylko jedną planetę.
Trebuie să o protejăm.
Dobbiamo prendercene cura.
Да показваме нашата любов.
Η κλιματική αλλαγή είναι μία από τις μεγαλύτερες απειλές που αντιμετωπίζουμε.
Para ayudar a combatirlo.
Ja rakentaa parempi tulevaisuus.
Združimo moči.
Dela idéer med varandra.
Inspiriamoci l'un l'altro.
Und neue Lösungen zu finden.
The European Climate Pact is here.
Y estamos impacientes por empezar.
Az Európai Éghajlati Paktum mindenkinek szól.
Chaque action compte.
No ambition too small.
Jer možemo svladati ovu krizu.
Maar alleen als we het samen doen.
Maar zing. Together.
Samen.
Zusammen.
So, will you join us?
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the launch event of the European Climate Pact. My name is Beatriz Rios, and I will be the presenter for today's program. Let's have a look at the agenda. We will have with us today activists, musicians, citizens like you and me, and even chefs to talk about climate change. And we will be joined as well by the Executive Vice President for the European Green Deal, Frans TIMMERMANS, who will be answering your questions. We also have with us artist Alex Garan, who will be graphic recording today's event. Hello, Alex. How are you doing? Also, you will be able to find translation in German, French, Italian, Spanish, Polish, Portuguese, Greek, Dutch, Swedish, and Hungarian. But before, I would like to know a little bit more about you. Now I'm going to ask you to go to your browser and type slido.com or download the app. You should be able to see the event code on your screen. It's EU Climate Pact. I want you to tell me, where are you joining from? I'm going to give a little bit of time for you to join slowly. Tell me where you're joining from, which part of Europe, maybe beyond Europe. France, I see France coming up. I'm sure there is people, Germany as well. A lot of people coming from Germany, I see. See Belgium, Greece, Italy, Austria, Spain, France, Italy again. A lot of German people and French people, a lot of Austrians and Spanish. Netherlands as well. Wow, a lot of people from all across Europe. This is amazing. I'm going to ask you a second question now. So bear with me. What have you done today for the environment? Let me know. Maybe you took a shorter shower. Or you had a bio breakfast. Let me know. What have you done today for the environment? Maybe you bike to work today. You took public transport. I see someone took a vegan breakfast, took a ride with the bike. Lovely. Thank you so much for your answers. Now, if there is something about climate change you've always wanted to ask to Mr. Timmermans, but never had the chance, now it is the time. We will be collecting the questions via Slido as well. But if you don't have any burning question or you see one that you really like, you can vote your favorite too, because we will collecting the most voted ones and Mr. Timmermans himself will be answering them live in a few minutes. But before we dive in, let's take a minute. I want you to be comfortable now, and I want you to bear with me. I know we've been confined at home for a very long time, and we haven't had the chance to travel, but I want you to think about that place on earth that took your breath away. I want you to think about the feeling of fulfillment when you go for a hike and you reach the peak, the beautiful view, the fresh air. I want you to think about the first swim of the summer, the water on your skin, the smell of the sea breeze. Even I want you to think about how wonderful it is to see the seasons change, even by just looking through your window. Well, all that is in danger due to climate change. Now, the good thing is that today we will be talking about all the many ways in which me, you, as citizens, can contribute to the fight against climate change. That is what the European Climate Pact is all about. It is about taking action, but doing it together. It is about spreading knowledge and raising awareness. It is about joining forces, building bridges, helping each other to find a way to contribute. The Climate Pact is about inspiring people, and because no action is too small, and together we can make it, we're going to explain to you how you can join. Let's start. The first goal of the European Climate Pact is raising awareness. Today we have with us 3 very special guests whose stories, I hope, will give you a better idea of the need for climate action. Now, when he became aware of the need to fight climate change, he was determined to find out what he could do about it. Some might dice to eat less or no meat, join a protest, ride a bike. Eric Stember founded Climate Science, an organization that works to provide real-life long-term solutions to climate change. But he will tell you all about it through this video.
Hello. Firstly, I want to thank the European Commission for the opportunity to give the opening statement at the launch event of the European Climate Pact. Initiatives like this one are crucial because emissions reductions in one year don't mean anything if emissions go up again the next year. What we need are solutions that allow us to turn into a zero-emissions society forever. This is exactly what I focus on. There is a lot of confusion about what's important to achieving this goal, but the numbers are pretty clear. Over 90% of all greenhouse gas emissions come from energy and agriculture. So we should unite, and we should focus on these 2 issues. When I first realized how big of a problem climate change is, I immediately wanted to do something. I wanted to act. So I went and Googled how to solve climate change, and a lot of the answers that were listed were things like drive less, fly less, eat less meat, and use a bamboo toothbrush, and so on. The issue with that is that even if we all do it, assume everyone does this, and we manage to reduce emissions by 50%, which would be a remarkable achievement, we'd still have climate change. It would just happen a bit later, because what used to take 1 year now takes 2 years to emit. So those are great steps, but they're not a solution in the long term. What's more, if we want to give everyone a fair and equitable life with the luxurious, comparably luxurious things that we can call our living standards in Europe, we have to expect emissions to rise. Well, that's unless we manage to develop solutions in energy and agriculture that allow us to live the life we do now, but do so sustainably. To bring all the topics relevant to this monumental change under one roof, I co-founded Climate Science. Climate Science is a non-profit organization that creates and distributes educational resources on solutions to climate change. With the help of 30 young scientists and a lot of illustrators, animators, reviewers, and authors, we were able to condense the complexity of problems and solutions relating to climate change into courses, children's books, YouTube videos, and much more. Because not all of us have 30 scientists available to them, I would like to summarize in a few sentences why this work has turned me from a reasonably pessimistic person regarding climate change to a cautiously optimistic one. We are seeing commitments and initiatives from all around the world. While those alone mean very little, they are coupled with technological innovation and policy change. So when we track short-term progress on climate change, I don't like to look at emissions on a year-to-year basis because we need to get to zero. Slight reductions don't mean much. What we should be looking at is the progress we're making towards having the tool set both on the technology and policy side, that it will take to get to zero emissions. And we are making progress on that front. For example, the price of new-built solar PV has dropped by over 95% over the last few decades. Similarly, there has been a lot of tremendous work in electrifying transport and some other sectors, mainly through batteries and hopefully maybe soon through hydrogen. There is work across the world on many of these different sub-problems, and that's really encouraging, especially because policy change and initiatives are coming with it. We're seeing major commitments, of course, here from the EU, as well as from China and many other places around the world. That's what turns me into an optimist. But it's important to keep in mind that none of this progress just happens. It's people. It's people's time, people's work, people's ideas, people's initiatives that create this change. We need to be those innovators and change makers, and we need to fund those innovators and change makers. That is how we're going to get to a long-term solution to climate change. It's going to require a lot of perseverance. There is no button anyone can press to solve the problem. It doesn't exist. But if we work together, and if we form communities of innovators and we make sure that people have the support they need to do the work and create the change that they can, I am convinced we will be able to turn the climate crisis into a climate challenge, and then we'll be able to tackle the climate challenge and live a life that is fair and equitable and do so sustainably. I hope the community around the European Climate Pact will represent this viewpoint of trying to persevere and deal with the full complexity of the problem. I'm thankful that I get to be a part of this journey, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.
And definitely, because the European Climate Pact is all about people action, I hope that we can all become climate optimists after today. Thank you, Eric. He is considered one of the best chefs in the world and was included in the top 100 most influential people by the Time magazine in 2019. Maybe if I tell you that he runs Osteria Francescana, one of the best restaurants in the world, do you know who I'm talking about? But what you might not know is that he's very much committed to ending food waste and ensuring a sustainable, ethical food system. Please welcome Chef Massimo Bottura.
Welcome everyone to the European Climate Pact launch event. And thank you President Ursula von der Leyen and Executive Vice President Frans TIMMERMANS for bringing us all together. In 1935, Antonio Gramsci wrote, "Culture is not having a stockpile of information, but the capacity to understand the complexity of life. Culture is the place we keep sacred. It's our relationship with the people around us. Someone who has culture has the deep understanding of themselves and feels connected to others." I had the good fortune to live the life I always dream of. Most likely because I made a choice 34 years ago and follow my heart, not my head, and choose an unlikely career path based on the passion for the kitchen. A few years ago, there came a moment when I realized that I needed to take a step back from the technically culinary revolution that had defined the first 10 years of the 21st century. I began looking outside our kitchens, our restaurants, and into the arena of the everyday life. And I did not see the technically culinary revolution create better food systems. What I did see was food waste and loss, and a lack of a long vision for the future of food. After receiving so much from the culinary world, I felt the need to give back to the community, to share my vision of what nourish the planet could mean. I thought perhaps through culture, not technique, we chefs could represent more than the sum of our recipes. And this is how a different kind of culinary revolution, a humanistic culinary revolution, starting taking shape in our minds, in our kitchen, and in our actions. This is how Food for Soul, a model to put the fight against food waste and social isolation on the front lines, began. This is how we defined a new way to feed those in need, through a specific attention to beauty and art, to create human connection. During lockdown in our home, but connected with the world, we decided to create Kitchen Quarantine, 75 evenings of cooking together with my family, become an exercise in sharing our passions, our fears, our tradition, and some culinary lessons with the outside world during the lockdown we had. Isolated in our apartment in Modena, we shared the profound joy and deep values of cooking at home with family around the world, while our volunteers in Refettorio were preparing, packaging, and delivering meals to the most fragile sectors of our society, the fragile souls. Today, in light of the global pandemic, we are beginning to understand the value of this humanistic revolution. We have the ability to create a more sustainable and equitable food system through a focus on the power of beauty, the value of hospitality, and the quality of the ideas. When I have doubt about my ability to affect change, I'm encouraged by the conceptual artist Joseph Beuys, who proclaimed in every public art project, "We are the revolution, not me, we, all together." So I invite all to participate and join us, because all action will trigger positive changes and help us achieve climate neutral by 2050. Join us. Together, we will make it.
How important is culture as well in fighting climate change? Who would have thought? I definitely feel more optimistic now. We can do it together. Now, she is a climate scientist working on energy efficiency, but beyond her work, she is heavily involved in youth engagement for the energy transition. She's actually one of the founding members of the European Youth Energy Network and a local activist for the UN Sustainable Development Goals, advocating for sustainable, affordable, clean energy. In this video, Luciana Miu will explain to you why youth action across borders, across Europe, is so incredibly important to fight climate change.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the launch of the European Climate Pact. My name is Luciana Miu, and I represent the European Youth Energy Network, an initiative that seeks to empower young people to lead the European energy transition. And I am privileged to share with you today some thoughts on the role of young people in driving meaningful climate action. Personally, I grew up in Romania and emigrated to the United Kingdom 10 years ago. Since then, I received my PhD in energy efficiency. I worked for the UK Parliament, organized the world's largest youth energy forum, developed a low-carbon beer, and communicated science through poetry, amongst other things. So I am pretty much your average run-of-the-mill millennial, and I pale in comparison to many others. Which is why I'm here today, to tell you about the countless young people who are changing the game when it comes to climate action, and what the Climate Pact can do and what it must do to support them in their efforts. Youth action is about more than activism. Indeed, the value of young people lies in many traits that make them great assets for Europe's climate ambitions, such as collaboration, action orientation, and vision. Firstly, by being collaborative, young people are a huge resource for breaking out of siloed thinking and into systems thinking, which is crucial for driving meaningful climate action. Indeed, this is the story of the European Youth Energy Network, young people from across Europe identifying the siloed nature of youth engagement with the European energy transition and working with the European Commission to try to improve this. In our short history, we've tried to break down barriers, co-creating the first ever European Youth Energy Day, putting the youth voice in the same room with high-level decision makers like Executive Vice President of the Green Deal, Frans TIMMERMANS, and seeking to connect youth-led, energy-focused organizations across Europe. By being action-oriented, secondly, youth raise ambitions when it comes to climate action. We are very loud about its urgency, and we understand its complexity. We know that the prospects for climate action are vastly different, even just across the European continent. We know of the intersections of climate action with future jobs and education and healthcare and peace. And youth-led European climate action is deeply rooted in this knowledge. For example, Visegrad for Sustainability, a youth-led initiative focusing on the specific issues of sustainability integration in Central and Eastern Europe. Yes, Europe, working to ensure that future energy leadership is both cross-border and multidisciplinary. Young innovators on Climate Kick's greenhouse program developing interdisciplinary solutions for climate change mitigation and adaptation, just to name a few examples. Thirdly, youth have a different vision of the future. They have new standards of what is acceptable, and they live by them. They own fewer cars. They invest more in sustainable portfolios. They seek out effective altruism. They found projects to revolutionize the way we live in our environments. Increased ambition, commitment, and awareness are pivotal objectives of the Climate Pact, and it is clear that young people are instrumental in carrying these objectives forward through their own heightened awareness and commitment. So, young people are primed for driving climate action at an unprecedented pace. So what can the Climate Pact do to unlock this action? To answer this question, I'd like to draw a parallel. Think of an energy resource. To use it, we generally start by attaching a value to it, which allows us to then access it, develop it, and harness it. What if we think about youth potential like an energy resource? We may start to ask ourselves some tough questions. How much are we actually valuing youth? Are we accessing its full potential with our current engagement mechanisms? Can we be better at developing youth, or are we stuck in outdated ideas of what is needed to prepare them for the future? How well are we harnessing their power? Are we channeling it to the core of our decision-making, or are we treating it as auxiliary power? And most importantly, are we taking for granted that the energy of youth is renewable? Are we forgetting that they too can become jaded adults? The Climate Pact gives us the opportunity to answer these questions and to raise the bar when it comes to harnessing youth potential. We can value youth fully by legitimizing the unique contribution of youth-led movements to meaningful climate action and giving these initiatives visibility and funding. By increasing our cooperation, we can further engage youth, especially those young people who are not yet engaged with climate action. We can be innovative about developing our youth, focusing as educators and employers on the multidisciplinary knowledge and skills that will be key to leading future climate action. And we can do much more in harnessing the power of youth. As businesses, by creating meaningful employment in the sustainability sector and empowering young people to become green frontrunners in all organizations. As governments, by co-creating knowledge and solutions on climate with young people, as the Horizon Europe mission for climate adaptation does with citizens. And finally, as citizens, by collaborating with young people in our climate action and ensuring that we speak for future generations as well as for ourselves. But most importantly, the Climate Pact gives us the opportunity to ensure that the energy of young people is renewable when it comes to climate action. Because climate change is not only the greatest challenge of our time, it will be the greatest challenge of times yet to come. Youth today and tomorrow will need to enhance and accelerate existing climate action efforts. So I leave you with this thought. By investing in youth now, we recruit the passion, leadership, commitment, and innovation necessary to achieve our Climate Pact pledges. But we also unlock a huge resource for taking these pledges ever further with ever more ambition. Thank you very much for your attention. Merci beaucoup. Mulțumesc.
Thank you, Luciana. Passion, leadership, commitment, that's definitely something that we need for the European Climate Pact. Very powerful, inspiring messages to start this morning. Now, let me recall you that you can ask your questions to Executive Vice President for the European Green Deal, Frans TIMMERMANS, who is joining us this morning in the studio. Thank you so much for being here today with us.
It's my pleasure.
Now, there is something that I have asked our public this morning, and is what have they done today to fight climate change? And I was wondering, Executive Vice President, what have you done today for the environment?
Well, today, I mean, it's early days today. First of all, I've come here with an electric car. My service car is now an electric car, which is a small contribution, but it's already a lot better. And then when I had breakfast, we made sure that we buy products that are green. My wife is very strict about that, and my kids are really forcing us to make sure that everything we do is consistent with what we believe in. And I believe that's the core issue. If you're consistent with your beliefs, you feel better. You feel better as a citizen, as a human being. And we're trying to do that. We fail sometimes. Sometimes we are a bit inconsistent. But every step helps.
Of course, as we were saying before, every action counts when it comes to fighting climate change. Now that I was listening to all these people, all their stories, the inspiring things that they are doing, I was thinking, what is it that motivated you to become a climate fighter? Well,
I think mainly because we see that we have a huge problem. Now we're fighting a pandemic. Thanks that we have a vaccine coming up now that will help us overcome this. But for the climate crisis, there is no vaccine. For the biodiversity crisis, there is no vaccine. So we need to change our ways. We really need to start living differently. Not less, not worse, even better. But we need to recreate a balance with our natural environment if we want to survive as humanity. We always say it's about saving the planet, but the planet can take care of itself. It was there a long time before we came along. It's going to be there a long time after we've gone. But the time we spend on this planet, we better create a balance with that planet to make sure we can survive. And it's very urgent. If we want to control what's happening with the temperature, we need to be climate neutral by 2050. If we want to be climate neutral by 2050, we have to reduce our emissions drastically in 10 years' time. If we want that to happen, we have to put the legislation in place now. So when I hold my grandson, who was born this summer, I promise to him, once you are grown up, there will be measures in place that will create a better living environment for you, that will prevent the climate crisis from being out of control. But to get there, I need to act now. Now that he's a baby, I need to act if he's to reap the benefits of this when he's an adult. Now, you're doing the policy part. You, as the Executive Vice President of the European Green Deal, are putting together the legislation. The European Pact is more about engaging people. Is that why you launched it? Because you believe in the importance of every citizen being active in the fight against climate change? Well, the beauty of the Climate Pact is that it appeals to people, not as consumers, but as citizens. Too long in the last decades, we as politicians have treated people as consumers, and then we are surprised that people start behaving like consumers. No, people need to be part of this, not just asking us to come with the solutions, but they have to shape the solutions themselves. That's why the pact is so important. People can contribute, can give us their best ideas, can learn from others. The exchange is what excites me most. The best practices, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And, I learn every day from listening to citizens who are engaged in this. It's actually something that you can build on that, indeed. Now, Luciana was mentioning the importance of the youth engagement. And we saw 2 years ago Greta Thunberg, a Swedish teenager, that decided to make a school strike for the climate, and she triggered a global movement. Now, I know that you've been in contact with her and with other young leaders, and I was wondering how that has influenced the European Green Deal. There would be no European Green Deal without them. It's that simple. We campaigned for it in the European elections. But if we didn't have this backing, if we didn't have this huge movement, then it wouldn't be there, because we needed to convince quite a lot of political forces to join us in this. It was a minority thing at first, but thanks to the young generations, it's now become something that has been embraced by almost all of society. I mean, young people should be very proud of what they have achieved. It's only a beginning, I know, but it's a hugely important beginning. We're talking about young people, and it's part of society that is actually convinced. But how can the Climate Pact help to convince those who still have doubts about climate change? By showing that whatever you do yourselves, the small steps, they all contribute to that. A couple of years ago, I was worried about climate deniers. I said there is no climate problem, or the temperature rise is normal. They are disappearing very quickly because the evidence is becoming overwhelming, even for people who are very skeptical. Today, I worry more about climate despair, people saying, it's lost already, we can't do it, what can I do as a person? This problem is too big. And the Climate Pact will show that it's not lost, we can still save the day, and everyone's contribution matters. Even the smallest steps lead us to the path that will lead us to a carbon neutral and a climate neutral society in 2050. So you also think that this pact can actually convince those who are already losing faith in the possibility to actually fight climate change? Well, it will empower people to show that they can do something themselves. It's an empowering tool. It's not a tool. It's not a tool to sort of go to people and say you should be doing this. It's telling people, look, you have this in your power to do this, and if you come together with others who also share our view that we need to have a climate-neutral society in 30 years. 30 years is a blink of an eye. If we need to get there, everyone should contribute, and the Climate Pact brings people together to learn from each other and also to show what can be done.
Bringing people together in a situation like the one we're living right now, when everyone has to stay at home, when the human connection somehow is lost, do you think it's harder, or is it more important than ever?
I really crave the human touch, to quote Bruce Springsteen. This is, for me, something I miss most. The last time I held my grandson was in September. And I'm just giving my example because I know so many millions out there are in the same situation. And I think we as humanity are suffering because we can't literally embrace other people. So second best is to try and work on the future of humanity. And we can do this online through the Climate Pact. But there's no alternative to meeting each other and embracing each other again. But as long as we can't do that, let's start preparing for a better future. And the Climate Pact can help that, and online we can help do that.
We have to make sure that we start working now, because otherwise we're not going to make it, as you said before. Now I'm going to move into the program to explain to our citizens how they can actually be part of the European Climate Pact. The European Climate Pact is all about citizen participation, as we were saying, engagement, activism in the fight against climate change. Now, if you want to inform, inspire and support climate action in your community, you can become a volunteer Climate Pact ambassador. Now, you might be thinking, I have no idea where to start. We're actually here to help you. Since the opening of the call for the ambassadors on December 9th, there has been a great interest in becoming ambassadors, and the European Commission is very grateful for it. Here are 5 people who are already active and want to be part of the Climate Pact to inspire you.
President von der Leyen and Executive Vice President Timmermans could not have put it any better. Making Europe the first climate-neutral continent is the greatest challenge and opportunity of our lifetime. As the Vice Mayor for Environment and Climate in the city of Stockholm, I know that cities have a vital role to play in this transition. After all, cities consume over 80% of Europe's energy and account for more than 70% of Europe's CO2 emissions. And everyone has the work to do now. In Stockholm, we are on our way to becoming fossil fuel-free and climate positive by 2040. The Climate Pact in Stockholm already gathers 300 companies who want to be part of this transition. As an ambassador for the European Climate Pact, I will not sit still until I have spread Stockholm's knowledge, experience and enthusiasm for ambitious climate action to cities all over Europe. We have a chance to make the European Green Deal a real turning point for our people and our planet, and I cannot wait to make it happen with you.
I'm Francesca Dandolo, and I live in Paris. As a former councillor of the city's Centre District, I've always been engaged in nature protection. I developed awareness for biodiversity with neighborhood residents by initiating the project of a green corridor to restore local bird population, insects, and small mammals in the city. The objective was to present the project and convince the local council. Developing and linking green corridors all over the area can be replicated all over the city and internationally on a local level. Over the past 10 years, I have organized 2 community gardens where more than 200 residents have participated. The City of Paris offers digital tools to amplify local initiatives. Being a European Union Climate Pact ambassador will enable me to inform and rally grassroots organizations, local and regional councils around the biodiversity initiatives the EU can help with.
Did you know that heating and cooling account for half of the EU's energy consumption and is still mostly fossil fuel based? Did you know that 34 million Europeans can't heat their home properly? I'm Maureen Cornelis, and I'd like to be one of the first European Climate Pact ambassadors. I was born in France, but now I live with my family in Turin, in northern Italy, a beautiful city staring over the Alps. But Turin has also a strong industrial past, and the air quality is one of the worst in Europe. My goal is to make sure that everyone unites to reverse the trend, starting with energy and buildings. I want to give people simple, easy to understand tools so that they can make the best choices. The most sustainable options will not only be good for them and their family, but also soft for their wallets and better for the planet. I will build on my professional experience as an energy consumer rights expert and my personal experience as a young mother. Together, we can get people out of energy poverty and make sure that our children live on a healed planet.
Dear European friends, my name is Frans Janssen and I'm active for climate since 4 years. It started with my young board membership at the Royal Dutch Chemical Association. I hosted field trips and also public discussions on chemical topics. From that, I got engaged into the Dutch Climate Agreement, and with young professionals from various sectors, we created KEC, a foundation of young professionals for sustainability. With KEC, I helped giving advice as a team member for the industry table, and afterwards, I became a board member to do the community management. From the Dutch Climate Agreement, I actually got more engaged afterwards locally and also on European level. For instance, I helped setting up the basis for youth participation in the regional energy strategies, and on European level, I co-founded the Green Deal for Youth network. It's a grassroots network that hosted brainstorm sessions on the European Climate Pact. We contributed to youth summits in the Netherlands, Sweden and Cyprus on the European Green Deal, and we are now getting engaged in the just transition regions. With my ambassadorship, I would like to give these activities a boost with my communities. And I think with the European Climate Pact, we can really make sure that all stakeholders get involved. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Martin Halseth, and I'm a 26-year-old rower from Norway. I'm qualified for the Tokyo Olympics, but as you know, back in March, I had to go back home to my hometown of Ålesund. There, I spent a lot of time in the water. My favorite hobby is freediving. And I could see a lot of trash that's not belonging there. So I thought that maybe I should start this crowdfunding campaign, which I've been thinking of for a while. And so I said that for every euro I get in, I'll pick 1 kilo of trash, take a picture of the trash, and show it to the people that gave me the money. So this, the wheel kept on turning. So now I've picked over 6 tons of trash, and I'm aiming to pick more. But this problem is way bigger than me. So I brought this underwater photographer named Vasco Pignol with me. And he's been documenting the stuff that I find to try to make some waves, to try to make some change and see that the problem is worldwide.
Well, that was impressive. If you see what just one person can do, imagine what we can do together. And today, we don't only have 5, but we have 180 of our ambassadors joining us from Zoom. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? And they're going to have a discussion before we go into the questions from Slido. And I want you to remember that you can still ask your question or vote for your favorite one, because we're going to choose the most voted ones to ask him, Executive Vice President Frans TIMMERMANS. But before, we're going to have a conversation with our ambassadors who will be joining us live on the studio. We have a lot of questions coming up from our ambassadors. I'm happy to see that they are willing to engage in this conversation with Executive Vice President. Can we give the floor maybe to Sebastian first, who is joining us today? I think we're not ready yet. Yes.
Good morning, Sebastian here from Northern Germany. Hi, good morning, Mr. Executive President Timmermans, and thank you a lot for this important initiative and your personal involvement in the climate issue. My question, there are many fronts I think we need to move faster on, for example, individual action, which is our focus today, organizational or corporate action, which is, for example, driven by the Science-Based Targets Initiative, or regulatory action by governmental bodies. Which area do you think should be focused on most to generate maximum impact? Thank you.
That's a fascinating question, but I believe we don't have the luxury to choose. We have to have these actions on all fronts all at the same time. And the beauty of it is that they reinforce each other. So if we would to concentrate only on one sector, the other sectors would perhaps not feel empowered to do the same. But if we concentrate on all these things at the same time, everybody doing their part. You know, the European Commission is about making regulations, making sure we have the right legal framework. That's what we do. But at the same time, we bring together all sorts of people from all walks of life, and we can help and support them in what they're doing. So I wouldn't prioritize, but just look at your own strength and operate on the basis of that strength. And I'm with the Commission. Our strength is to prepare good legislation and good regulation. That's what we will concentrate on. But at the same time, we can also be a platform to bring all sorts of people together so that they can share their experiences. That's how I see also the Climate Pact.
And we'll be talking more about the role of institutions, organizations and businesses later today in the program, because that's part of the European Climate Pact as well. I would like to know if Frans is already ready to join us on the studio. Are you there, Frans? Hello, Frans. Two friends in the studio.
Yes, I can hear you. Good morning from Munich. My name is Frans Fuchs, and I'm engaged at the organizations of Parents for Future in Munich. And my question is how we can get out from these subsidies we do already in fossil products and fossil industries, because we need those money very urgently to drive the transition, and how we can get out of the subsidies very quick. That's my question.
It's been a very debate.
Yeah. This is Frans with a Z at the end, and I'm Frans with an S. So, it's an extremely good question. That's why yesterday we presented the proposal from the Commission to redirect the subsidies we do in the energy sector towards sustainable energy and no longer give support to fossil fuel. At the same time, you also have to stimulate the big energy companies to do the same. And what I find fascinating is that even big oil companies a couple of years ago were still trying to help climate deniers and others to make their case. They've completely changed, and they are reorienting their investment towards sustainable energy. We need to stimulate that, and how can we do that? Well, we do it with regulation, as I said, but also we can convince the shareholders of these companies to push the companies even further in a sustainable direction, so that they commit to being climate neutral in a certain period of time, and that then they will redirect their investment and disinvest from fossil fuels. I think we need to stimulate that as much as we can. And sometimes, you know, governments also take those decisions. The decision of the Danish government to no longer exploit oil at some point and gas in the North Sea is one of these decisions. But everything we can do to push it in the right direction is helpful.
And the question of green bonds have been very important as well for the European Commission. We've seen that as well. We're going to move now to Matthew Back. Are you there, Matthew? Would like to join us? Hello, Matthew. Can you hear us?
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, I'm absolutely thrilled to be here on behalf of ECLA Europe, and thank you very much to Mr. Timmermans for all the answers. My question is, cities have and towns and regions have critical roles to play in the implementation of the European Green Deal. And we at ECLA are working towards local Green Deals, which we think are the way forward. Our question here is, how can the European Commission support these local Green Deals as kind of the rooted, bottom-up kind of starting point for a successful and ambitious European Green Deal? Thank you very much.
Well, we know at the Commission that, you know, if it has to happen locally. And we are bringing together in the Covenant of Mayors, we're bringing together in the Committee of the Regions. Some of our ambassadors now are mayors or are in local government. Their voices are so important because they can get things going. What I would like to add to that, you know, the cities really want, because the people are asking for cleaner air. They're asking for more bike lanes. They're asking for emission-free public transport, etc., etc. We can work on that. But what I would also like to stimulate is that we create strong alliances between cities and rural areas. Because one of my biggest fears is that we create a chasm between cities and rural areas, and that they are on a different planet, almost literally, in terms of the urgency we need. Cities cannot survive without vibrant, healthy rural areas. And rural areas absolutely need the input of cities to bring the new technologies, to get everybody on 5G, which is for the climate very important, and to bring agriculture into a far more sustainable field. So I would say let's try and create alliances between urban areas and rural areas. That is the future also within the Climate Pact.
Absolutely key, and also often is the rural areas that face the most consequences of the climate change, so we absolutely need to work together to make sure that we prevent that from happening. Now I think we have Francesca, who would like to ask a question as well. Are you there, Francesca?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello, Francesca.
Hello to everyone, and hello to Mr. Timmermans. I'd like to ask a question. As an ambassador, in dealing with not-for-profit organizations and institutions who need financial support, how can an ambassador help to obtain EU funding?
At some point there's always a question about EU funding. But it's a good question. It's a good question because we want to try and bring together people, whether they are funded or not funded, and those who are not funded, we're trying to help them get the funds they need. So I hope we can also use the Climate Pact to do that. So bring it to the table, bring it to our attention, and we will see what we can do. I can't make any promises offhand, obviously, but we will see what we can do to support initiatives that take us into climate neutrality.
Of course, there is many ways in which you can access EU funds, even by being a citizen and being part of an organization. Now I'd like to give the floor to Rafael. Rafael, are you there joining us today? Good morning. Hello, Rafael, can you hear me?
If you're asking me, yes, I'm right here.
Hello.
Hi.
The Mayor of Warsaw with us today. Thank you so much for being here today with us.
Yes, it's wonderful to be with you. I'm the Mayor of Warsaw, the capital city of Poland, and I'm very happy to be with you. Sometimes we fall into a pessimistic mood, but the messages from the European Council were fantastic. One very difficult government who was threatening a veto and who was threatening to veto the budget and also, our very ambitious plans when it comes to fighting climate change decided to actually agree on those proposals after some pushing and shoving. And now we can actually focus on those priorities. And the important thing is that we have to do it with the cities, just as the Vice President, Frans Timmermans, was explaining. We need to help the underdeveloped regions. There's no doubt about that. We need to help all the people in the mining regions, all the people who have to requalify, the regions who have problems when they have to move from the coal economy. But the important thing is that we need to engage the cities because we are the ones producing 70% of all the emissions, and we are ready to do it. I mean, most of the mayors that I talk to, and I'm representing the Committee of the Regions, but I also am within the Pact of Mayors, Convent of Mayors. And now, thanks to the European Commission, I become the ambassador of the Green Pact. I've talked to quite a lot of mayors, and we are very much committed to actually meet those ambitious goals. And we are doing quite a lot ourselves. In Warsaw itself, we decided to phase out, all the coal-powered furnaces. We are changing our fleet of buses into zero-emission buses. We are building subway system. We are investing in greenery. And we are ready to be ambitious. Why? First of all, because we believe in it. But secondly, because we are close to the citizens. And when I walk the streets of my city, all the time, the young people are asking me, what are you doing, Mayor, to actually meet those challenges? And of course, with such a pressure, we need to do it much more quickly, and we need to also raise awareness. We don't have to raise the awareness among the millennials, but when it comes to our generation, we got to talk to people and tell them, you got to do yourself quite a lot in order to contribute, in order to save the planet, in order to invest in quality of life. We are ready to do it, and we are also ready to talk about it. We are ready to use our own minds and our own funds within our cities, but we're also ready to cooperate, to do the benchmarking, to actually use the best examples in the cities in Europe and come up with plans with the European institutions which are going to actually demonstrate to the people then we can change our cities within just a few years. We just need the pan-European programs. We need the willingness of the European Commission. But knowing Frans Timmermans pretty well and having talked to them on numerous occasions, I know that we are going to do it together.
Are we going to do it together?
Absolutely, absolutely. And now that Rafael was online, I would also like to say, who's affected most by the pandemic? The weakest and the poorest in our society. Who's going to be affected most if we can't get the climate crisis under control? The weakest and the poorest in our society. So we need to make sure that what we do is also socially sustainable. And this is one of my biggest fears in all of this, that we would leave people behind. We cannot afford to leave people behind. We need to protect vulnerable people. We need to make sure that this is a just transition into a sustainable society, into climate neutrality. And, you know, I know Rafael pretty well. He has that same challenge in Warsaw. We will not get to where we need to be if not everyone in society feels part of this. And if we start leaving people behind, they will stop this change from happening. Apart from the moral issue, you cannot leave people behind. It's also then a political issue because you can't get done what you need to get done. So let's add the social dimension to this, because without it, we're never going to succeed.
Absolutely. It's not only about convincing people, it's indeed about protecting people so that they are part of the change as well. And they enjoy the change. We will be going again. Thank you, Rafael, for joining us today. We will be going now to Floriana. Floriana, are you there? What would you like to ask the Executive Vice President?
Yes, hello, good morning, everybody. I just would like to understand what he thinks about, view the COVID tragedy, the COVID crisis, and what's happened, how you think this is going to change the future policy at EU level, how everything happened or is still happening to us for the COVID crisis is going really to change something as EU policy. Thank you.
Well, it perhaps is a bit early days, but in my understanding, the way I see things, the way I feel things, we're never going to go back to the world as it was before. Never. Not that we're going to be in a permanent pandemic. That's not what I'm saying. But if we draw the right lessons from this pandemic, we understand we need to change. And if we draw the other lesson from this pandemic, that Europe, it took a while, but Europe now understands that we can only come out of this together, that's also going to change our policies. And I think people are very much aware, our citizens are very much aware how vulnerable and fragile our relationship is with our natural environment, and how vulnerable and fragile we are as human beings and as individuals, and how much we depend on our society and on being in this together, on showing solidarity. So I truly believe this is a moment. It could end up in two ways, either in a dystopian future where it's everybody for themselves and society ending up in permanent conflict, or in a more solidarity-based society where we understand that we need to do this together. And I hope the Climate Pact can contribute to building this society based on well-understood self-interest, because that's how I would like to define solidarity.
And we've been seeing that up until now, and I think it's a good news that most of the things that we've been seeing happening during the pandemic has been these solidarity building across borders, and particularly in Europe, we've seen quite a lot of that, and the European Climate Pact is going to be key when it comes to making the European Green Deal happen. I'd like to go now to Terencio. Terencio, are you there? Hello, how are you doing?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, thank you very much. The question that I was posing, it is concerning the agriculture. Here where I'm living in Darmstadt, in Germany, we have a wonderful place called Hofgut, where they have all very extra bio, everything. They're still caressing all the animals that they have and so on every day in order to make them very happy. But if you are going to buy things there, are extremely expensive. And generally, all this green food and so on is generally more expensive than the other one that you find out. And I think that the target should be to reverse the situation, that what it is green should not be more expensive but become a normality and less expensive than the other one. I understand that behind the green food there are a lot of regulatory issues and things that make the price going up, certification, assessment and things like that. How could we handle or could we do in order to reverse the situation? Other ways, there will be always the rich people that buy the green and the poor people that buy the rest.
Yeah, this goes back to the same issue I was mentioning before. We can not afford to leave people behind. And green, as he calls it, green food should be accessible to everyone. For that, we need to help farmers transit to this new way of producing. To do that, we need to support them. Now, the problem, the core of, and we're negotiating this now with Parliament and Council to get so-called eco schemes, which would help farmers move to ecological farming. But the core of the problem is this. Many farmers are extremely worried to lose income in this transition. And the issue with the Common Agricultural Policy is, sadly, 80% of the money goes to 20% of the farmers. So there is a huge problem that the money is not, in my view, reaching always the right people, the people working on the land, the families with their farms, the families working on the land. They should be supported in this. Now, too much money is going to the big landowners and the big agro-industrial complex corporations. So we need to reorient the Common Agricultural Policy in this direction I was mentioning, so that money reaches the people who are actually doing the work more. To do that, we're negotiating. It's not easy at all because of this fear of loss of income. But I think we can start redirecting the policy if we are successful in these negotiations.
We definitely have a very hard fight ahead.
Yes, absolutely.
I'd like to go to Irina now, that is joining us today. Hello, Irina, are you there? Hi, Irina, are you there?
Hi.
Hello? Hello.
Hi.
What would you like to ask?
Oh, I have so many questions. Maybe I start with the most money thing. So is there any chance that the EU Commission is withdrawing the cap? Because only 30% of all this money is going to green funding and 70% is going to old fossil-prone things. But, okay, I guess this is a rather big question. Just yesterday, we had a petition to the German Bundestag that we would like to have a citizen council on climate, as they have in France and Ireland, and successfully. So do you think that the EU Commission could nudge all the governments, and especially the German, to have those councils? Because of the petition, they need to consider it, but they don't need to make it happen. So could you help with that?
Well, my advice to national governments would be to look at what's happened in France, to look at the impact of this dialogue with citizens, because that's how the French government learned that there is a huge support in the population for climate policy. And now the French government are even considering putting this in the constitution through a referendum. And I would hope other countries would follow this example. Of course, cultures differ, so it's not going to be the same format everywhere. But this idea of having people discuss this and then drawing the consequences from this discussion in your policy choices is creating empowered citizenship. And that's what we're trying to do with the Climate Pact as well. And on the first question, because I'm not dodging your question on the Common Agricultural
It was
Policy
inevitable it would come
at all. The Commission can always withdraw if we believe that the end result is far removed from the content of our proposal. But if we withdraw, we then have to have a proposal that could get the majority support that is better. And today, in good conscience, I cannot say that I could put a proposal on the table that would get the majority in the Council or in Parliament that is better. So what I'm doing, I'm putting all my skills and efforts in fighting in these negotiations. So instead of saying let's withdraw. I'm saying let's try and improve it as much as we can. And then we will draw the conclusion at the end of the negotiation. And I know that, a common agriculture policy used to be quite an esoteric business. Only farmers and the ones who represented them were engaged in this. But Irina has shown clearly that now wider society is looking at this. This is no longer a very small issue. It concerns everyone in society. And I would urge Irina and all the others who feel passionate about this to let their voices be heard also to their national politicians. Because the leaders of our nations, they are very much committed to climate neutrality, but they should also have a sight on the agriculture policy, because if we can't get the agriculture policy to be reformed, we can never get to climate neutrality in 2050.
The importance of talking to the national governments as well, and national politicians, that we sometimes forget. It's not only happening everything in Brussels. We're going to go to Kai now. Hello, Kai. How are you doing? What would you like to ask the Executive Vice President? Hello.
I'm fine, and I want to say thank you for selection of the Naga Foundation as a volunteer ambassador. We're working on international dialogue and transfer of knowledge and technology. It's already mentioned technology is one of the keys, and you know that we have different levels already in Europe, from country to country, from city to city. But we also have a big part in the world of developing countries. If we look to our neighborhood continent, Africa, the growing of population, the coal, oil, fossil resources there. So how the European Commission want to support the international dialogue and transfer of technology and solutions, and also the work of the ambassadors, what we're doing there. Thank you.
Well, I would like our ambassadors to help me convince everyone that Africa is our sister continent, and that if things go badly in Africa, they will go badly in Europe. And if things go badly in Europe, they will go badly in Africa. So our fates are linked, interlinked. That's the first point. My second point in this is this. Sub-Saharan Africa produces less energy from solar power than the Netherlands. So there is a huge potential in Africa for power generation on the base of renewable energy, wind and solar. So if we help investment in those countries to go into that direction, they can leapfrog over a number of developments we made before, and they can avoid a number of mistakes we have made. Now, initially, African countries were quite reluctant because they believed that we would put more burden on them and not help them. But what I've seen in the last year, 2 years, is that in African countries there is a huge realization of the effects of climate change already now on them. The fact that South Africa is now committed, South Africa, huge coal producer, to get out of coal and to work towards climate neutrality is incredible. But it comes after the realization that these nations, that this continent, is highly affected already by climate change. Look at the locust plagues we've seen in Eastern Africa. Look at the unpredictable weather now, the seasons that can no longer be banked upon, etc. It's causing havoc. The strong point of Africa, we sometimes, in European public opinion, we look at Africa and say, oh my God, all these young people, they're going to come here. I look at Africa and I say, wow, look at these young people. They can build a very strong continent. They are smarter, healthier than ever before. They get more education than ever before. If we help empower them, they can build a powerhouse, which is our sister continent, and then we both profit. Whether it's in solar energy, in wind energy, in hydrogen economy, in all sorts of areas. So I am optimistic as soon as we understand that our destinies are linked.
I think it's very important what you were saying about all the many opportunities there is in Africa, especially when it comes to sustainable energy indeed, and this passion and leadership that we were talking about before about young people. We're going to go now to Julius. Hello, Julius. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. What I wanted to get at is the international dimension. Sometimes, as an activist, I feel a bit powerless because as youth organizations, we try to avoid single-use plastic cups. We try to avoid plastic bags and so on and so forth. We try to take the bus and not take cars. But then the real big polluters, and now I don't mean that we in Europe, we don't pollute a lot. Per capita, we pollute an immense lot. But in terms of really big polluters outside of Europe, I'm really afraid that these might not take the lead they should take. And I'm asking, how can the European Union utilize their levy, which is perhaps access to the single market, in order to force also the big polluters? I'm thinking about a very big country in the East that produces a lot of goods for Europe. How can we make them also conform to this climate ambition? And what are your thoughts on, for example, an idea like a carbon import tax? What are your ideas on regulation regarding ships? Because I understand that container ships that cross the sea lack an enormous amount of regulation in terms of their emissions. How can we make the world sign up to this climate pact? Because if only we change in Europe, yes, it's going to make our conscience better. We're going to be the first carbon neutral continent in the world. But is that going to save humanity? Or do we actually need to go beyond that and also make the world change?
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. We need to make the world change. And a year ago, when we said we would take European leadership, we will go for climate neutrality in 2050, many were saying, what are you talking about? It's going to be expensive. We're only responsible for 9% of the emissions. It will not really have an impact. But if you look at where we are now, Xi Jinping committing to being carbon neutral in 2060 and then following that up with concrete steps. A new administration coming in the United States saying they will rejoin the Paris Agreement and then have some very, very far-reaching steps to go towards climate neutrality. Japan has declared climate neutrality 2050. Korea has done the same. South Africa, I mentioned already before. This is starting to become a global movement. And I think they're not doing it just because of European leadership. Absolutely not. They're doing it out of well-understood self-interest. If China wants to restructure its economy so to answer more domestic demand rather than just export, they need to make sure the carbon footprint per capita is going down. Otherwise, they'll suffocate in their own emissions. So there's always an element of self-interest. But also the fact that Europe has said, if you don't take those measures, we will have to protect our industry by introducing carbon border adjustment mechanism at the border, as you mentioned, has also pushed them in saying, what can we do to avoid getting a levy before we can get into the European market? Well, by taking the same steps as we are doing so that there is a level playing field. And I believe these are the measures we need to be taking. And we are preparing, as European Commission, proposals to protect certain parts of our industry if they take the right measures to decarbonize and they're faced with competition from elsewhere where they don't take the right measures. Then I think we are in our full right to protect our industry. And then if you want to come on the European market, you will have to comply with those rules. Not just in terms of your carbon footprint, but let's also mention the issue of deforestation. We don't want to be responsible as citizens for the deforestation of primal forests in Latin America, in Central Africa, or in Southeast Asia. So we'll have to introduce rules that products coming as a result of deforestation no longer have a role in the European market. These are the things we need to do. But I am more optimistic than I am a year ago. Nobody's telling us you're crazy, you're taking a lead, and nobody is following. We see step by step the world joining us in this, and that gives me cause to be optimistic. The proof of the pudding will be in November next year in Glasgow, when we meet for the next COP. Then everyone has to put their plans on the table and show that they are on a track to comply with the Paris Agreement. And let me at the end remind you of one thing. If we don't do this, if we don't keep the rise of the temperature well below 2 degrees, things will be completely out of control. Humanity will then no longer be able to control what is happening in our climate. And that is something we need to avoid for our kids' sake, in my case, even for my grandkids' sake. And we have to do it now. This cannot wait. That is the most complicated thing about climate policy. If we want to get where we need to be in 30 years' time, we have to act now, today, tomorrow, the next day.
And definitely, as Julius was saying, it's something that Europe alone cannot do. I think it's very important, the question of the soft power of the EU, not only through diplomacy, but also through regulation at also a global level. We're going to take our last question for our ambassadors from Laura. Hello, Laura. How are you doing? What would you like to ask?
Hello. I would like to ask what exactly Mr. Timmermans would recommend to do right after this meeting at the EU level as an ambassador for climate at the EU level. What should we do? Is there a master project plan in place? Should we build one otherwise? So all together, we are taking action, not where we are today in our initiative, but at a master level. EU level.
Well, I think if you ask me what should we be doing immediately as ambassadors, get to know each other, create this network, make it strong, the network, and then let's look at what we can do in the short term, get the renovation wave going, which we have proposed as Commission, which means work with cities and other regions to look at their plans for buildings, how we can renovate buildings, insulate them better, put solar panels or heat pumps in them, create the right infrastructure in cities, invest in that so that we get jobs back as soon as possible, come with the best ideas, share them, say, oh, I heard from the mayor in Warsaw, he's doing that, hey, and I heard from the vice mayor in Stockholm, she's doing that. How can we use that in my city? And then make sure you also address your national politicians as strongly as you can. Force them to present plans to us for the recovery phase that are in the climate direction. Make sure that all the good ideas are shared so that we can also, when we talk with national governments, point in that direction and tell them to improve the plans they have. And then work also with the European Parliament. Get the corporate world into this, because one of the big surprises to me was that there is a huge understanding in the corporate world that they need to change very quickly as well. Stimulate them to change. Let them say what they're doing. Perhaps they could inspire you as well. And then, if we do all that, make sure you take people along who will not necessarily immediately feel part of this, especially small and medium-sized entrepreneurs who are thinking about how am I going to survive next month. You know, if your worry is how am I going to get to next month, you're not that worried about how you're going to get to 2050. So if you can help them with that, it would also create another support for the movement.
A lot of work for Lara and for the other ambassadors who are part of the platform, of course. And I wanted to thank all the ambassadors today for joining us and for this very interesting conversation with Executive Vice President. And also tell you that you can actually apply to become an ambassador. We will be sharing more information about how you can do it today at the end of the program. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And now we're gonna go back to the questions that the audience is asking through Slido. And the first question is from Jan Simon Widman, and he's asking, why are only 30% of the Corona aid funds put towards climate-friendly solution? Don't we have to make all in the upcoming investment green and sustainable if we want to remain truthfully regarding our desire to become climate neutral?
Well, first of all, we said that all the money should do no harm. So that's already an improvement. So every euro invested should not be invested in things that go in the wrong direction. So that creates consistency. And then we're saying in the recovery part, 37% should be spent on climate policy, 20% on digitization. And then you come to 57% in total, because digitization is an integral part. It's the biggest and most important enabler of climate policy, I would say. So they stick together. So I think the situation is a bit more positive than you might think. But all in all, I think if we look at the plans that have been submitted so far by member states, they've understood that they need to change and need to change direction as well. So I'm slightly more optimistic than perhaps the questions would suggest. And let's keep pushing for this. And the more we push, the more projects we will get. But I also have to be honest, in the sense that we only have a small window of opportunity of 4 years. We need high-quality projects, and we need to make sure the money is not squandered. So we have to be very, very precise when we talk to member states about what they're doing. So what I would hate to see happen is so-called helicopter money, just throwing money out of the window. We need to make sure that the money is put to good use. There you can check on us and you can follow us, and we need to prove to the Climate Pact, to our citizens, that what we're doing is taking us in the right direction.
And there, the role of the Commission in looking into the national plans is absolutely vital.
Yes.
The second question is coming from Miroslav Polzer. He's asking, what is the global dimension of the European Climate Pact? Are there any links to global campaigns and programs of the United Nations system, like the Race to Zero campaign or the Action Climate Empowerment Program?
Well, what we're doing with the Climate Pact actually goes into the same direction as what Secretary General Guterres of the United Nations is advocating, as what we're doing with the sustainability programs we have everywhere, the Sustainable Development Goals at the 17 at the global level. So it's all in sync, I would say. And the more we can link into global initiatives of citizens, the better it is. There are some in the United States, there are some at the global level. And this is also something for the Climate Pact Ambassadors to discover and to help us find the right initiatives and link into them.
Of course, they can have their own projects that go beyond the European borders.
Most of the project will go beyond the European borders, I would
Indeed.
Assume.
We have a third question from Pranab. He said 100 companies are responsible for 71% of global emissions. Aggressive lobbying tactics employed by these companies to persuade the European legislators is too damaging to society. Can we outlaw lobbying from these companies?
Well, I think that those companies depend a lot on investors for their future. First of all, what I didn't mention yet, which is important to understand, we're also in an industrial revolution. So industry is changing anyway. Our task is to make sure that it changes in the right direction. And we need to show, especially to investors, that if they invest in the traditional economy, in fossil fuels, etc., their investment will be lost. They will start to create so-called stranded assets. And how are they going to explain that? Because these investors work with money that come from pension funds, from citizens. So they need to be accountable to that. And I have seen even, the biggest investors in the world are really changing direction because they understand they can no longer continue what they're doing. And that is educating all these companies as well, that they need to change. So I have seen in the last year, they're abandoning all these policies, trying to undermine the Green Deal, etc. And they're jumping on the bandwagon. They're also saying, okay, if we want to have a future as major corporations, we need to be climate neutral in the future. Let's start investing in that direction. And we will have to devise legislation that pushes them even more in that direction. That's what we will be doing.
I think that's key as well. The minute that you know that the legislation is going to push you away from that market, you wouldn't invest in that because it has no future.
And what they're asking of us, give us legislation. Okay, it can be tough, but make it predictable and make it sustainable so that it lasts for a long time. If it is predictable and we know what we face in 10 years' time, we know exactly what we can do to invest. And I think this is a good deal between corporations and ourselves. We need to be consistent and predictable, and they need to change.
Because the businesses also need to know what they have to do to be part of the change. Another question from Magnus. According to the EU emission gap report from 2019, we need to reduce emissions by 7.6% each year to be in line with the Paris Agreement. This means that 70% reduction compared to 1990 by 2030. Why does the Green Deal not take that into account?
We've done what we call an impact assessment, which is study all the elements in how we can reduce emissions. We came to the conclusion that if we reduce our emissions with 55% as compared to 1990 by 2030, we're still on track to get to climate neutrality in 2050. I stick to that because one of the weaker points in analyses that say we need to do more is that they discount the fact that other parts of the world are also starting to engage. And I think Europe should take a huge share of responsibility, also for historic reasons. this is where the industrialization started. This is where the fossil economy started. We have a huge responsibility, more so than much more so than developing countries. But there are other industrialized parts of the world who also have a responsibility. And we cannot, as Europeans, take all the responsibility simply because we only have 9% of the emissions. So if others start taking their share of the responsibility, and all indications are they're starting to do that, then our minus 55 target is enough to get us to climate neutrality in 2050.
And the good news is that we had an agreement on the European Council to achieve that goal. We will have also a very long fight on hopefully not so long, on the climate law that we have ahead with the Commission and with the Council and with the Parliament as well. That's where the questions from our public. I want to thank you very much for being here today with us and for answering all the questions from all different citizens across Europe. I'm sure that they are very happy to have this conversation with you, and they will take all the lessons from them when they go and they do their work as Climate Pact Ambassadors. Thank you again for being with us.
Thank you for doing a great job.
Thank you so much. Well, now let's move into the next part of the program. But first, let's have a look at how Alex is doing with her drawing. Hello, Alex. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Alex. Now, as important as raising awareness is to take action, and every action counts. Another way you can join the Climate Pact is by making a pledge. Now, this could go from committing to small changes at home to live a more sustainable life to bolder, bigger initiatives that can inspire others as well. If you are a regular citizen like me, but you would like to make a pledge to reduce your carbon footprint, you might want to check us Count Us In, which is an initiative that aims at mobilizing 1 billion people to act on climate change. But I will leave the incredible Christiana Figueres, who is the former UN climate chief, and Nico Rosberg, Formula One world champion and climate change activist, to tell you more about it.
Hello, friends. I'm Christiana Figueres, a very proud Costa Rican citizen. But here is my little secret. I actually come from European extraction. My grandparents on my paternal side were Spanish. My grandparents on my maternal side were Danish. So way deep down in the bottom of me, there is a very proud little European corner. And that is why I'm very happy to be joined today by Nico Rosberg, who will help us to go through an exciting European initiative.
Hello to all of you. Thank you very much, Christiana. I am a very proud EU citizen and best known maybe for my past as an F1 champion, but now a sustainability entrepreneur, and super excited to support you, Christiana, and the EU on achieving this ambitious new target.
So Nico is a great example of the kinds of transformations that we want to see. And many of you will have been informed of the fact that just last weekend, we celebrated the 5th anniversary of the adoption of the Paris Agreement. And we celebrated the fact that something that was unthinkable, close to science fiction just 5 years ago, which was the concept of net zero by 2050, net zero emissions from any sector, from any person, from any city, from any corporation, from any country by 2050. That was frankly unthinkable 5 years ago, and probably the most difficult component to land and to adopt into the Paris Agreement. But it was done with the work of thousands of people to be able to get to that conclusion. Since then, what appeared impossible 5 years ago has now become unstoppable. Now we see a growing number of countries, the last list of which came on Saturday, adopting net zero commitments by 2050. We see a growing list of corporations coming forward with net zero commitments by 2050. Some of them actually accelerating it to 2040, and some even to 2030. Because what they are doing is they are understanding that decarbonization is actually good for innovation and for efficiency, and they are pulling the future into the present. So that is governments moving forward, corporations moving forward, financial sector moving forward, with a growing number of alliances of all different parts of the financial sector coming forward to commit to net zero by 2050. But there is one key piece that also needs to be moved, and that is all of us, individuals, citizens, certainly of the EU, but worldwide, who also have the responsibility and the opportunity to contribute to the new world that we are together creating.
And as an ambassador of exactly that, of your initiative, Christiana, called Count Us In, I'm really proud to announce the big partnership between Count Us In and the EU Climate Pact. And this is where we come in. We hope to really help to mobilize EU citizens to help achieve this new ambitious goal of reducing emissions by 55% by 2030 for the EU continent, which is very, very ambitious. And so Count Us In, it really lays out a plan for all of us citizens in 16 steps. And primarily it covers the areas of our buildings, so how we live, our transport, how we move, the food we eat, and finally also the products we buy. And so at this point, I would love to ask all of you to check out countusin.org and let us know, can we count you in?
And the counting piece is really important because this is about every citizen contributing. The Count Us In aggregator that is behind this website will allow us to count in many different ways. It will aggregate first the carbon savings of the steps that are taking, the number of individuals taking steps, and the number of steps taken. And you can contribute to that aggregator. You can put all of your efforts in there and watch the aggregator increase exponentially as we all contribute our efforts.
Thank you very much for listening. And remember, let's all be stubborn optimists, as Christiana loves to say.
What seemed impossible 5 years ago is now unstoppable. I'm going to keep that with me during today's show. Now, thank you so much, Nico and Christiana, for your initiative and for your work. For now, you can make only the pledges in English, but we are working on it, so you will be able to do it in your own language very soon. Now, beyond individual action, the role of businesses and organizations is vital in building a more climate-friendly society. Here, you have some examples of how pledges from various organizations could look like.
UEFA is today committing to the European Green Deal not only as an organization, but as a guardian of football, the most popular sport worldwide. Saving our planet is a pressing emergency for all of us. With our European Climate Pact pledge, UEFA is committing to setting science-based targets to reduce UEFA's emissions in line with the Paris Agreement goals, creating a 3-year joint TV ad campaign to broadcast the European Green Deal into hearts and homes across Europe, establishing a Green Deal working group including national football associations and other football stakeholders in the lead-up to Euro 2024.
And alongside UEFA as co-organizers of this European Championship, we will aim to make this tournament the most sustainable and climate-friendly Euro in history.
European football stands with the European Union in leading the charge of climate action across the continent.
Hello, I'm Sam Lee. I'm a musician, conservationist and environmental campaigner.
And I'm Faye Milton. I'm also a musician, and both Sam and I are founder members of Music Declares Emergency. Congratulations on the launch of Climate Pact, and thank you for inviting us to take part.
Music Declares Emergency is a group of artists, music industry professionals and organisations who have declared an environmental emergency.
Our declaration is calling upon governments to act urgently on climate and biodiversity loss and to reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions by no later than 2030. We recognise that the emergency has arisen from global injustices, and so we're committing to working towards systemic change to protect all life on Earth.
Music Declares Emergency acknowledges the environmental impact of our industry's practices and commits to taking urgent action.
Through our No Music on a Dead Planet campaign, we pledge that over the next year we will harness the incredible power of the music industry to engage the public with a positive vision of how we can overcome the climate and ecological emergency.
In the run-up to COP26 in Glasgow, our industry has an incredible opportunity to strengthen and galvanise public support for the EU Green Deal.
Music and culture have a unique ability to reach communities all over the world and cultivate positive vision for the future.
And keep up the good work, because remember, there's no music on a dead planet.
Thanks for listening.
Hi, my name is Marta, and I was born in the Canary Islands in Spain. I'm a youth representative for the European Scout region. There are over 2 million Scouts in Europe. Scouts are agents of change in their own communities. Scouts take action and inspire others to work for a greener Europe. For example, Scouts in Croatia are running a large-scale project of afforestation called Barranca. With the Scouts of Spain, we are working to save the bees. We have disseminated plant seeds in order to grow more flowers. I myself, since I was little, participated annually in reforestation and cleaning beaches campaign. I am currently part of the Scouts of Spain sustainability team when we work to unlock the power of young people through education. Young people learn about sustainable lifestyles, to change their own behaviors and how to mobilize their peers in order to fight against climate change and to protect the environment. We Scouts want to make a pledge today, engage even more in our local communities. We will promote, talk and educate about climate change through non-formal education activities. We will also advocate at local, regional and national level for ambitious climate action.
Technology companies have a critical role to play in Europe's ambitious Green Deal goals. And Google's been carbon neutral since 2007. We're aiming to operate on carbon-free energy everywhere at all times by 2030. So we're proud to play our part. And in this spirit, we're delighted to join the EU Climate Pact to help achieve the Green Deal vision. Let me tell you a little bit more about our specific commitments. First, sharing AI advances that we've made that can help others. We're partnering with European industries to become more energy efficient with AI, offering them the same technology that's helped us to cut the energy costs for cooling our data centres by 30%, so that commercial buildings, airports, shopping malls and other data centres can also reduce their own carbon impact. Second, our €10 million impact challenge on climate change will fund bold ideas that can accelerate Europe's greener future. Third, investment and jobs. €2 billion of investment for new carbon-free energy generating projects and for green infrastructure in Europe, and over 2,000 new clean energy jobs in Europe by 2025. Fourth, we'll work with cities across Europe to help them reduce their carbon emissions by 1 gigaton per year by 2030. Fifth, for everyone, through all of our core products, we'll continue to prioritise the most authoritative sources and voices on topics prone to misinformation, including climate change. This encompasses servicing information panels on YouTube to provide users with context alongside their content. Sixth, and finally, we're also supporting Europeans who want to learn new skills so that everyone has the chance to succeed as we create a greener and more digital future. This is going to be a decisive decade, not just for Europe, but for the whole planet. I'm delighted Google can be a part of the new EU Climate Pact and look forward to working together for a carbon-free future.
Hello everyone, my name is Robert Golob. I'm the CEO of company Gen I from Slovenia. We are the largest electricity supplier in our home country. My ultimate goal is to leave the world more sustainable than I found it.
We lead by example.
We were the first company in Slovenia to offer affordable solar power plants for self-consumption to our citizens. We have electrified 70% of our car fleet, but we're aiming for 100%. We also have our own micro e-mobility application for our employees. We follow climate-friendly trends in corporate culture too. We have a corporate garden where our employees are growing fruits, vegetable, and herbs, and not to mention we also raise honeybees. We will set new standards with Energy Plus corporate headquarters, and as of January 2021, we will provide our customers exclusively electricity from carbon-neutral and renewable energy sources. We have decided to embark on a fossil fuel-free future.
We certainly hope others will follow.
Music, football, scouting, and of course businesses. There is a place for everyone and for everything in the European Climate Pact. Now we're learning today about all the incredible things that people are doing across Europe to protect the environment. This morning, I asked you, what have you done today for climate? After all these stories that you have heard in this almost 2-hour show, now I want you to tell me what would be your pledge now, after all that you have heard. Let us know through a slider, and I will get back to your answers a little bit later. But now, in the meantime, let me introduce you to Pekka, Natasha, Marie-Stefan and Emmanuel, who will be sharing their pledges today with us. Hello, Pekka. How are you doing? I think you're joining us from Finland, right?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Happy to join you this morning. And it's snowing outside, which is great. And so saving our winters is important in the future.
Tell me a little bit more about yourself and what it is your pledge, and why did you decide to join the European Climate Pact?
I'm a mayor of a city called Lahti, which is in southern Finland, 100 kilometers northeast from our capital, Helsinki. And this is a city region of 200,000 people. Most of the Europeans live in the cities and communities of our size. So this is a very typical European city here. We are the European Green Capital next year, 2021, chosen by the European Commission. So we have a very long story in environmental programs and doing climate action too. My pledge is very simple. As the mayor of the next year's European Green Capital, I and our city will do all what we can is in our hands and do to link the cities together, to make sure that all cities learn from each other, share knowledge and inspire each other in order to move faster, and in some cities to start actions now. So linking the cities together, inspiring each other, and making sure the cities that are crucial actually in order to meet the targets of the Climate Pact and Green Deal are active and do what they are in their hands to do. We can actually do a lot, because my city is a good example of that. We are a typical city also because we are an old industrial city doing now the transformation in the more sustainable green economy and leaving the old past behind. We are not the biggest, we are not the richest, we are not the most resourceful city in Europe, and yet we have done a lot. So my kind of message is always, if we can do this, every city and everyone can do this. Already today, we have cut our emissions by 70%, and Lahti will be carbon neutral by 2025, which is tomorrow. And this is not a political statement. This is the path we are now following. Already have cut our emissions by 70%. We don't have a landfill anymore here in Lahti. We have a very highly developed circular economy. 99% of our municipal waste is recycled or utilized other ways. And then we are now opening a carbon neutral construction learning and knowledge center to make sure that all infrastructure what we are building will be carbon neutral and very sustainable in the future. And next summer we are electrifying our traffic. So you can do a lot. And my kind of wish is also that the European Climate Pact and the Green Deal will help cities in Europe to move faster, to start action, and really support this transformation what all cities must do. And then finally, citizen participation. We can't do this with our dear citizens. And it's not, if a mayor says something, people might believe it or not. But so that's why here in Lahti we have already a long time involved our citizens, from children to elderly people, to be part of this transformation. And we have even used our ice hockey team, which is the biggest sport here in Finland, to be our ambassadors, and they will be the world's first professional carbon neutral sports team. They can talk to people, they can send a message. So you can do a lot. And finally, as a mayor, sustainable city will and must be a better city. It's not enough to say that, yes, we meet these targets and numbers. It must be a better city, more inspiring, a better place to live. And that's what motivates me and our citizens here in Lahti.
And I was thinking that now that you were mentioning these team members of the hockey team, they should become ambassadors for the European Climate Pact, don't you think? I was wondering...
Yeah, I can ask them. I can ask them.
Absolutely. I was wondering, how do you think the Climate Pact is going to help you to achieve these exchanging practices with other cities, engaging with them, and making sure that they too join the European Green Deal?
First of all, it's very important that the European sends a very clear and strong message. This is what we do together here in Europe. So that's even the framework is very important. Then also it's very important that we have these kind of tools and different ways to do this. And also, of course, in a big picture also it's very important, as we already discussed, that the EU funding is really targeted on the impact and things that really can make a change and impact. But I think this is a great opportunity for all cities in Europe. We must be active, and also cities can be. I hope also the European Union has a dialogue with the cities all over the Europe to figure it out what would be the best ways of moving forward. But yes, this is a big thing. It's important for us, and I think it provides us lots of possibilities to move further.
Looking forward to see all the beautiful things that you're going to do in your city, Pekka. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us here today.
Thank you.
Now I would like to introduce Natasha. Hi, Natasha. How are you doing? Hello, Natasha.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. I'm fine, thank you.
So, Natasha, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do, and what is your pledge, and why do you think the European Climate Pact can help you to achieve that pledge?
Okay. So I am from Subotica, one beautiful city, museum city, from period of secession. It is a city on north on Serbia. I worked as a preschool teacher more than 20 years in a classroom with children from 3 to 7 years old. And also I am e-twinning ambassador of Serbia. I am ambassador of sustainable development goals. My opinion is that education has one of the lead roles in educating and reducing climate change and learning about sustainable development goals. Also, my preschool institution participated in some global projects, global goals project and climate action project, and we involved we implemented the sustainable development goals in our yearly plans. I think that we can do a lot of things as individuals to work on small everyday change in our behavior and develop responsibility for the future of our planet. And also, I think that it's much harder to teach adult people to change behavior than teach children from the early years to be responsible citizens. So my opinion is that children can be agents of change. And also, I noticed that people are not informed enough about climate change and sustainable development goals. Also, teachers are not informed enough. So one of the most important things is to educate the teachers how to teach children about climate change and sustainable development goals.
So what you would like to do is teach teachers so that they are ready and they have all the information.
Yes, one of the main tasks for me will be to organize various webinars and trainings to teachers in cooperation with our local community, with the Office for Sustainable Development from our town. And also, I think that we should connect with many various institutions, to connect with other countries, to connect with other ambassadors, and to share our knowledge, to share our good practice. Also, I would like to say that preschool institution Naša Radost has 5 active Erasmus projects, and 3 of them are closely connected with climate change.
Yes, go ahead.
And we will organize conferences, mobilities. We will exchange good practice between various European countries which are partners in this project.
So I was thinking, I'm imagining this toddler being taught about climate change. How did they react when you told them about all the different challenges that we have ahead? And do they go after and talk to their parents and explain that to them so that they can join the fight against climate change?
Yes, it's very interesting. We think that children don't have so much knowledge, but children are very creative, and they are active participants, and they have so many ideas how to make change. They have many solutions to solving problems. They are little innovators, and they can do a lot to spread their ideas to their parents, to other citizens, especially if we connect with media, for instance.
And they all have this sensitivity towards nature and animals that we sometimes lack when you grow up as an adult as well, right? So it's very important to engage them since they are very little, because as we were talking about before, this is a long-term change and we need actors to make that change happen, indeed. Thank you so much, Natasha, for joining us today. It was lovely talking to you, and thank you for everything that you're doing. You're actually training the future generation that will protect the environment. Thank you so much for your work. Now I would like to introduce, thank you so much. And I would like to introduce now Maria Stefan. Maria Stefan, hello, how are you doing?
Good morning. Fine, thank you.
Good morning. I love the energy that you're bringing to the show. Please let us know, what is it that you're doing and how is the European Climate Pact helping you?
Thank you very much, Beatrice. It is a real pleasure and an honor to be with you today and to speak on behalf of the Philanthropic Coalition for Climate. My name is Marie-Stéphane Mahadex, and I am the Executive Director of the Daniel and Nina Carasso Foundation, an independent family foundation operating in France and Spain, so very European. So I have co-initiated the Philanthropic Coalition for Climate, hosted by Daphne, the European umbrella organization of more than 10,000 philanthropic foundations. This coalition is supporting foundations across Europe that fund and engage with local initiatives on climate action, usually in areas where public funding or commercial investments are not happening. And I would like to give you 3 examples of the works done by foundations. The German Schöpflin Stiftung is funding the non-profit journalism and research office Corrective. Corrective has a climate editorial office and is running a project on climate-friendly mobility transport in the Western German region of the rural area. Second, the Guerrilla Foundation is supporting several local grassroots movements across Europe, among others, protests against deforestation of the Ambach forest by the German energy company LWE, the movement Fossil-Free Culture in the Netherlands, and the very famous Extinction Rebellion in the UK. And the third example is coming from my foundation. The members of the network, European Foundations on Sustainable Agriculture and Food, chaired by the Carasso Foundation and hosted by the European Foundation Center, have aligned their strategy and funding in order to help civil society in several European countries such as France, Italy, Spain, and Poland and Germany to advocate for a greener common agricultural policy and more specifically for its real implementation in national action plans. This dialogue with national policymakers was strongly mentioned by VP Timmermans not long ago, and I really insist that CAP has to be reformed if you want to reach our targets for a climate-neutral Europe. And indeed, we have to help our farmers in this process. So the support of foundations is crucial for these projects and initiatives, as they would not exist without this philanthropic funding. Foundations are flexible, responsive, they integrate the risk dimension in their DNA, and they are close to the field to identify needs and innovative solutions. The corona crisis has daily proved the importance of foundations to support civil society working closely with the most vulnerable. Above all, foundations are keen on collaborations between foundations among themselves, but also with public bodies at all geographical levels and with other private partners. We don't bring the big money compared to public one, but we have long proven that we have a strong leverage effect. Still, I am convinced that so much more could be done and should be done from the philanthropy in Europe. Philanthropy that annually spends 60 billion euros for public goods. This is why the pledge of the Philanthropic Coalition for Climate, or the European Climate Pact, is to commit that we will promote the philanthropic commitment on climate change across Europe and beyond. Over the last 12 months, 130 foundations in the UK, France and Spain have signed up to this commitment that ask for implementing a climate lens to our programs we fund, to our investments that we have with our endowments, and to our operations. I am looking forward for Europe's philanthropy sector to join forces with the European Commission and all the stakeholders of the European Climate Pact to meet the ambitious but crucial climate targets in the 10 years to come. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Maria Stephanie. I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit about the challenges that you have faced in trying to mainstream this climate goal all across foundations, and how do you think the European Climate Pact can help you?
Well, I think it was a good momentum, and foundations were really ready to integrate this cross-cutting issue that is climate, because climate has an impact on all the areas of foundation where they are working on. It could be education, gender, housing, migration, health, food systems, and many others. So it was a good momentum, and the answer was very positive. But we have to expand. We only have 130, and our target is to reach thousands of foundations, not only in Europe, but across the world. So the European Climate Pact is a really good kickoff for us to help us to put this philanthropic climate pledge within a wider framework and to initiate collaboration with many other sectors.
Thank you so much, Maria Stefan. I hope that you can actually reach out to all those many foundations that are not yet part of this pledge, but I am sure they will be happy to join. Thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thank you.
I would like to go now to Emmanuel. How are you, Emmanuel? Good morning.
Good morning from Berlin. Hi, how are you?
Well, tell me a little bit about yourself. What is your pledge at the European Climate Pact, and how do you think the pact can help you to achieve that pledge?
Yeah, I'm the founder and CEO of EcoWorks, and I worked my entire professional life in developing technologies to reach net zero. And EcoWorks now works on solutions, technological solutions, to renovate buildings to net zero. As you know, we have 220 million homes in the EU waiting for renovation. And it would be great if most of them or even all of them would be renovated to net zero. So what we do is actually to build a new envelope, a new building around the old building. and then we enable the building to produce more energy on the roof with solar panels and heat pumps than the tenants need for hot water, for heating, for electricity. But it's not only about like net zero challenge, it's also about affordability. So we need a new industry, like as big as the car industry, to create this new industry. And actually this industry could be about saving emissions and make business and profit in saving emissions. And this is a great challenge. And this is also a European challenge. We were from the beginning a European startup funded by Climate Kick, and also a lot of ideas coming from all over Europe.
Making money by saving emissions. I am sure many people are very happy to hear that's actually possible, and it actually is. I was wondering, you as a businessman and also coming from a startup, which is a small company, what are the challenges that you face in this work toward a more climate-friendly construction, considering that this is one of the big challenges that we have ahead in Europe, and also this part that you were mentioning about the question of the social aspect that we've been talking about also with Executive Vice President Frans TIMMERMANs.
Yeah, the one big challenge for us is to really change the construction industry and make it more digital and industrialize the construction industry. But also it's a social challenge because we actually do not only create a digital product, we are actually changing the ways people live. And we have to convince the tenants that these renovation packages are actually good for them, and how to use these new homes, and how actually to make these homes more attractive also for the people, which now, for example, live in fuel poverty, so they don't have money to heat their homes. So this is a big, not only an economic challenge to get funds and investors, but also a social challenge.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for your work, and good luck in the coming years in making sure that we have more climate-friendly houses all across Europe. And thank you so much to all the people who presented the pledges today with us. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now let's have a look and read some of the pledges that we got from you. I'm seeing that many of you are going to talk to your friends about climate change. It's very important to raise awareness. Repair and reuse is also an option that has been voted by many of you. Walk or cycle more. I think that's very important. I do it myself. And also good food waste. That's very important. I'm sure that Massimo Bottura will be very happy to hear that you are planning on cutting food waste. Also wear clothes that last more, and eat seasonal, and eat more plants. Thank you so much for your answers and for being here today, being part of this conversation that we're having throughout the morning. Now, I'm sure that our colleagues from Contest Scene will be very happy to help you to achieve all these pledges that you have shared with us, so make sure that you check their website. Now, the Climate Pact is nothing without you, and every action counts. We all have a role to play. If you want to join, make sure that you check our website, the European Climate Pact website, where you will find all the information about how to become a Climate Pact ambassador or to present your pledge. You should also check our satellite events that are going to be organized by our stakeholders, or you can organize one yourself if you have a topic you would like to organize an event about. And if you want to stay informed about everything that's coming up, you can also subscribe to the Climate Action newsletter, and stay tuned for the many ways in which you can join the pact in 2021. Now, as we come to the end, I want to thank our guests, the Climate Pact ambassadors, for their incredibly inspiring and moving stories. Thank you so much, guys. And thank you so much to our panelists for their work to build a more climate-friendly society. Thank you so much. And thank you, Alex, for your art. It was such a beautiful way to summarize today's ideas to change the world. Thank you, Alex. And thank you, of course, Executive Vice President Frans TIMMERMANS, for being with us today. And, of course, thank you, everyone behind the cameras who made this show possible. Thank you, everyone. And of course, I want to thank you for joining us today, for your participation and your enthusiasm. It was great talking to you. And for many of you, the next weeks are going to be all about celebrating Christmas and the end of the year. Now, over the past few months, 15 young Europeans have been sharing ideas and tips on how to be more sustainable as part of the Ding Dong Challenge. So before we close the program, we have a very special Christmas challenge for you from Anna. Now stay safe, save the planet, and have a merry sustainable Christmas.
Hello everyone, I'm Anna Maziello, one of the 15 Ding Dong Challenge ambassadors. I'm Italian, but I live in Portugal, in beautiful Sintra, and together with my fellow ambassadors here in Portugal and in Greece, Lithuania, Belgium and Germany, we've been challenging young Europeans to implement small changes in their daily life to adopt a more sustainable lifestyle. The Ding Dong Challenge has been a great learning experience. I already work in the sustainability field, and online I share daily tips and tricks about this topic. But the Ding Dong Challenge